You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Lenard with NACS.
And I'm Carolyn Schnare, also with NACS.
So, Carolyn, we often talk about how tools for retailers in how they can do their jobs better. And that's really the focus of today's conversation. Oftentimes, smaller retailers, they're very focused on how do they run their business, and they don't really have the ability to think outside the box, how they can prepare for what they don't even know about. And today's conversation is going to be about there's some help for you. So today, joining us by phone is Kristen Hodgers. She's with the American Red Cross. And welcome, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me.
And today we'd like to talk, we've talked about the Red Cross a number of times on these podcasts, but this one's different. We'd like to talk a little bit about the Red Cross tool called Ready Rating. Can you give us basically an overview about what Ready Rating is?
Certainly. So Ready Rating is a free program that helps businesses, schools, and organizations become prepared for disasters and other emergencies. And the reason that this is so important, especially for smaller to medium-sized businesses just along in conjunction with their corporate headquarters, is because 40% of businesses that are impacted by a disaster never reopen. So Ready Rating members, it's a completely free tool, but members of the program have access to one-of-a-kind tools, resources, and information for evaluating their current level of preparedness, improving their ability to withstand disaster, maintain operations, protect lives and property. So it's a wonderful tool, whether you're taking your first steps toward preparedness or if you have a fully functioning emergency management program.
And when you look at the news and you just see whether it's a flood or a snowstorm or you name it, and you see these dramatic images of cars going down a street or what used to be a street, and you think about 40% of these businesses never open, it's really compelling to think about how there could be a way. I'm not saying that this allows you to potentially reduce the odds that you will never reopen and give you the skills to avoid some of those challenges.
That's correct. It certainly also looks at not only improving your current level of preparedness, but how can you change your operations moving forward so that your organization and your employees can be more prepared in the future.
So does it also, Kristen, give like a retailer, say I own 2 stores in Nebraska, and I'm in a quiet area. There's not a whole lot of risk for natural disasters where I am situated. But there's everyday, I don't want to say disasters, but everyday situations that also come with this. So if I go in, I log into Ready Rating, what am I going to do? Walk me a little bit through that.
So the first thing you'll see when you go to readyrating.org, it will pop up and ask you 3 questions. Is your organization prepared? And I'm going to actually pull it up right now while I talk to you both. So it'll ask the 3 simple questions. Once you answer those questions, it will let you choose between a short and a long version of our Ready Rating Next Steps assessment. So after you choose which assessment you'd like to take, the system will generate for you a Next Steps report. And the great thing about that report is it's tailored to the answers that you give to the assessment questions. And it will give you resources that they suggest you to look at, to view, tools that they suggest for your business or organization, and you can immediately get started with your preparedness steps, with improving them. So it's not something where you take the assessment, you have to wait for a long time. This becomes an ongoing time consumer while you're busy with your organization or business. So you can immediately get started. Lots of tools that make it easy to get your team prepared for improving their preparedness, which is great because that way you don't have to plan on taking, a huge chunk out of your workday to get started on this. So it makes it a lot easier than many other programs that are comparable in a call to action for your employees.
So this isn't, we're talking about like stores, like retail stores, but this could be any business. This could be a beverage manufacturing business. This could be a knitting store. This could be for anybody that's listening to this can get involved, correct?
Absolutely.
And also, when we talk about, we have our supplier members, and so they have back offices, or even stores that have back offices. And we've talked about natural disasters; those are caused by floods, etc. Unfortunately, we have part of the conversation involving active shooters, and how do you prepare for something like that? That's also part of the training involved here. In what might you do in your business, whether you're a store or whether you're a business that isn't customer facing, that you can address some of those issues related to active shooter.
Absolutely. And there's a great tool on the Ready Rating Resource Center called How to Conduct a Drill. And you get to choose between quick drills that are tailored, like active shooter, hurricane, tornado, earthquake. So it's possible that not every disaster will impact your business based on its geographic location. So it makes it very easy to pick and choose which disaster drills you think will be most beneficial for your business.
And when everybody has insurance. They have insurance around all kinds of a lot of these things we've just talked about. But the idea of being prepared and just kind of pre-planning for hopefully something that never happens. But the idea is it is like insurance, and you have to have a little bit of muscle memory, go through the process, learn about what are the things that you need to learn more about, and then learn how you might react or act in a situation. It's all about the planning, because if the event is already taken place, it's a lot harder to control a positive outcome to a situation.
Jeff,
that's very true.
I was just going to say, we've talked in a number of podcasts. We have several episodes that go back. And Kristen, you might have heard some of them, where we've talked to some retailers, especially in the Houston, Texas area after the hurricanes of 2017. And we talked to a very large retailer that also exists in that area. And one of the interesting things that someone told us was they don't know how to close their store because 24/7 operations that a lot of convenience stores don't close. They didn't even know who had the key to this store in order to do this. So there's things that just it doesn't occur to you when you always have someone on the clock. And what if you have to shut down a store in a specific way of, like, do you turn off the coolers? Do you turn off the how do you where's the light switch? Things like that they've just never encountered. And I think that that's something big and small that all retailers can do, is just have a plan of action, just a minor plan. But this is a great formalized way of doing that.
Sure. And there's two resources that come to my mind in particular on readyrating.org. One is a dependency map and disruption checklist, and the other is an alternative equipment and critical function resource. So you mentioned someone not knowing where the key was. Well, with a dependency disruption checklist, if you take just a few minutes with your team to fill that resource out and have it in an area posted on a wall or maybe in a binder that's very easily accessible, that way you only have to record that information and put it in an accessible place one time. So people will be able, maybe if you're training new employees, if you have some turnover, you have new people, and maybe someone forgot to tell them where that key was. Well, you can just check your dependency mapping checklist and see what you need to keep the doors open, to keep operations moving. If you need to close, how to do that. Just a checklist of what your operations need to do in order to either stay open, close, continue, whatever you're trying to achieve.
And a perfect example about what you've both been talking about. I was out in California in the Bay Area and talking to a retailer who was in the area where all those horrible fires were last year. And one of the stories they told us is they said that there were some stores very near the fires, and people were working, and then it just became unsafe and they had to leave. And it wasn't from a lack of plan. It was a little different. Well, it is. How do you adjust to something that's so fast moving like a fire? And what they did was they just took a bungee cord, one of those typical bungee cords that you use to maybe close your trunk if you have a bunch of items in there, and they wrapped it around the door and they left. And that is an instance where you're very vulnerable. But at this store, thankfully, the customers were amazing customers, and the bungee cord had been taken off. Somebody had come in, they wanted to get a soda. They got a soda, they left a note and $5 on the counter. And
wow.
And so that was a positive ending. But really, when you talk about the investment in a store, in the store itself, in all of the products that you have in that store, it's a big investment. So you want to have some sort of plan for how you close, because often don't think about that. You're open 24 hours. Why would you even need a lock? But you do. And
a plan.
So what I like about it, this is all really interesting and important things for, as I said, whether you are consumer facing and you have customers or whether you're just a general business. Now, the name Ready Rating is also intriguing. Is there some sort of score that you ultimately get out of this that says, I'm rated as pretty good, or I need a lot of work, or I am top of the class? How is Ready Rating a rating?
So when you take the assessment, you'll get to choose your answers. Your answers will be populated, and that's how we arrive at your score. And the great thing about this score is you can go back and retake the assessment. So let's say, for example, the first time you take the assessment, you don't get a score that's as high as you were expecting. And that's very common, and it's not a bad thing, because what we're trying to do with these questions is jog your brain. So you think of some preparedness steps that maybe you've never considered before. So oftentimes, the first go you give to the assessment, your score may be a little bit lower, and that's absolutely fine. So after you read your next steps report, it'll give suggestions, resources, videos, links to things you can look at and things you can do. And then after you do those things and view those resources, you've educated yourself, you've made some changes, you can retake the assessment and see how your score goes up. So we suggest that you update your assessment at least twice a year, preferably quarterly, but at least biannually.
Do you have any examples of a business that maybe thought they were doing pretty good, took the rating, found out, we got some work to do, and then within a few months really reconfigured their whole concept and now have taken it to a new level in terms of how they think about the unthinkable?
Absolutely. You mentioned California and the wildfires there, and I did teach a Ready Rating workshop in California about 2 months ago, and there was a gentleman there representing a winery in Napa Valley. And so the great thing about Ready Rating, there's a contact form on there. You can reach out to us anytime. We can be available for you. So he and I worked pretty closely together with the resources in the Resource Center, and he essentially created a new program for his business using those resources. So before, they didn't have much to go on. Now they have a whole system that they've created using these resources. They can continue to make improvements, take the assessment, see how they're doing, include all of their new hires in, make sure that their current employees are still keeping up with trends and best practices to stay more prepared no matter what.
And I think it's interesting that you said to take it at least twice a year, but sometimes quarterly, because like you said, trends, trends in this case aren't always the best thing you want to follow, but things change. Things change from 5 years ago when we were talking about disasters and active shooters and just horrible different things that are happening in the world today. Our storms are getting worse, apparently, due to climate change. And so there's just more bad things possible. So I like that you said to continue to assess. So in other words, don't take it now and then check back in like 10 years after something bad's happened. Keep doing it every quarter, because the more you practice, the better you'll get.
Yeah, and the other...
when we put the active shooter resources up on readyrating.org, at that point, we didn't know if they would be popular or not. At that time, this was relatively new for us to go into active shooter type of training. And so we just didn't know. It wasn't something that we'd really been asked about before. And those resources are some of our most popular right now. Just in the past, I would say 6 months, the amount of visits, the amount of downloads on the resource pages has gone up dramatically.
Well, and let's hope that trend changes in the near future.
Well, it reminds me of this book I read a couple of years ago, and it was actually recommended at a NACS leadership event, the Checklist Manifesto. And basically, the whole book was about how the medical field, how the aeronautical field, everybody uses checklists, and checklists are really the key to guide your behavior. And the example was Captain Sullenberg when he landed that plane on the Hudson River when they had the bird strikes. The key was they had a checklist, and his job was to do whatever he needed to do to say, this works, this doesn't work. His co-pilot, same thing. And that was, he claims, and he's also somewhat modest, he claims the checklist was just as important as his flying skills. And the same thing with NASA, when they are sending someone to the moon, and they are looking at how to send somebody to the moon with the equivalent computing power of a greeting card today, the checklist was pretty important in how do you do something to send somebody that far away. And it's largely the same thing that we're looking at here is, can you ultimately come out of this with the ready rating where it is a simple process? We do have this. Here's how you follow this. And we have has your back on this in terms of thinking about things you don't think about.
You know, the great thing about a checklist is you never know, first of all, who will be at your business. If you have employees, you don't know who will be there, and you don't know, because fortunately you haven't had to deal with a disaster yet. So you don't know how they'll react. With a checklist, with these resources in an easily accessible place, it streamlines that. So, you know, if someone is in the middle of a disaster, they don't know what to do, they're at work, they have other concerns. They may be panicking about their home or their family or their kids. And, you know, they have to be at work, they have to be working on your business, and maybe they have to be making preparations, shutting things down, responding quickly. With a checklist, they'll know exactly what's expected of them.
And practice.
So it just puts you in a position where you can streamline that process and hopefully stay open.
So shifting gears slightly, the one thing that you said, and we've said several times, that the Ready Rating program is free. So you go in there, you do have to sign up. You have to put your name down and probably your email and some contact information, but it's free. And I think that that's so important to note, because in several of our different episodes, and NACS has been working with the Red Cross, because we're also helping the Red Cross raise money as much as possible. In our stores, we have donation kits available for ordering on our website, convenience.org/Red Cross. And I know the Red Cross has been phenomenal across lots of platforms, from iTunes to other stores, raising money, because that money that those customers and these organizations, these corporations are giving to the Red Cross is what allows you, Kristen, to do your job, to get out there and do the trainings, to set up readyrating.org, to do all these things. So I'm giving a very long plug for the Red Cross, that donations help because of programs like this that make it available to us, to our retailers, to our businesses, our schools, to perform at their best.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's almost like if your insurance company says, oh, by the way, your insurance is now free. I think most people would say, I'm in. It's the same kind of thing to a certain extent.
And Jeff, you've brought up the word insurance, which I know a lot of people, they hear that word and, you know, they want to go hide somewhere. But just a quick tip on insurance. Insurance often, especially if you're in an area that's disaster prone, they'll send out updates to your policy. And, you know, I've been in situations where I'm talking to people and they didn't find out that there was a change in their policy until after the disaster hit, and they were stuck cleaning it up with not the level of coverage they thought that they had. So doing reviews of your insurance policy quarterly, again, that's something that we suggest. And just a quick tip, there's a resource on readyrating.org called the Emergency Action action template. And this is a fantastic template, not only for you and for your business, but also because a lot of times you can use your Ready Rating seal to send to insurance companies to let them know that you have taken steps and training to improve your preparedness. But a lot of times they'll ask for your emergency response plan, and you can use the action plan template to easily create that plan and possibly send that to your insurance company and get a discount.
Oh, that's an important thing, a cost savings. That's good. That's helpful.
Right.
Well, so as we start to wrap up for real this time, I think I said that before, but Kristen, can you tell us just again, how do folks get involved? Where do they find this? How do they, if they have questions, what can they do?
So all you have to do is get online and go to www.readyrating.org. The first screen that will pop up is the 3 questions to determine which assessment, either the short one or the long one, you would like to take. Once you become a member, you can easily log in. You can revisit your next steps report, your assessment, your rating, anytime you want to, and retake it anytime you would like. You can download all of the resources. You can distribute them as you like, not only within your convenience store or gas business, but to your personal and professional networks outside of that as well, and just contribute to a more prepared community.
Well, Kristen, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate hearing about this. Not only can you save your business, your employees, and help your community, but check out the Red Cross, check out readyrating.org. And again, thank you for joining us by phone.
And thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.